So let's talk some more about some gray areas and concerns. So the IT implications of networking wireless devices, roaming, quality of service, what happens when a patient who's being monitored wirelessly leaves the hospital Wi-Fi network, moves into a 3G network, or goes from a public to a private network. Those are tough questions, and it's important if you've got a medical device that could potentially alarm because of a life-critical problem. That can be a real issue, and the FDA and the government is very concerned about that. Medical, as the manufacturers are, of course. Medical software, mobile devices, we've talked about. Wellness and fitness, a lot of companies are trying to fit products right into that crease. I would argue that heart rate application is a prime example. That's a company that has chosen to fit their device right into the crease, hoping that they'll be able to market it as a fitness device, and the FDA will leave them alone, and it worked in their case. And then this question of interoperability, which I mentioned earlier, is a very big issue with the government. So these are areas where you can expect to see changes in the government's position that hopefully will lead ultimately to some clarity. I personally am not concerned about it. I think things like interoperability, that's a good thing. Anything that we can do to enforce consistency between in the industry, common standards and so forth for this, or roaming and quality of service considerations is a good thing. All right, so let's talk about reducing regulatory risk, and now I'll give you an example of a strategy that we're deploying. So our device, the good news is it's a very innovative device. From a regulatory standpoint, that's a real liability because there's almost too much innovation. And the FDA does not do particularly well when confronted with excessive innovation. So what we've decided to do is to unbundle the risk. So the first 510K that we're going to submit is simply a basic vital sign monitor. Yes, it only weighs 100 grams and it's worn on the body and there's nothing like it out there. But the FDA is familiar with it. The predicate's clear. We could pick a dozen predicates and there would be no controversy around that. Then we're going to submit a second 510K which adds other claims. And it's all about what you claim with these products. The claim here will be connectivity, so the ability to wirelessly connect to a Wi-Fi network. It's a little more controversial. We'll get it through. It's not a problem. The third is the truly novel feature, which is a technique for measuring blood pressure continuously, non-invasively, without the use of a cuff. That's going to take more time. And so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and unbundle, and we'll just launch in a sequence until we get all of these features approved. And that'll give us something to get on the market quickly. Be very careful. So there's two types of claims that you can make. You can make a tool claim, or you can make an outcome claim. So let me give you an example. We have the ability, because we monitor movement and posture, we can detect a fall. Now, if I go to the FDA with a claim that says the Sotera system, when applied to a patient, will be able to prevent a fall, not a good idea. I'm going to have to go through clinical trials with people, and I'm going to have to demonstrate that it's safe and effective. If I go to the FDA and say, I can detect an abrupt motion, that's a tool claim, and I can do my testing in the lab. Now that sounds very easy. The only problem is, of course, the sales rep wants to talk about the better outcomes. That's what they want to talk about. So you have to be very careful, because that can get you into a lot of trouble. Over time, we are going to do the trials necessary to embellish the claims and be able to really actively and explicitly promote the advantages of our system, and there are many of them. So this is my last slide. Let's talk about general advice. I would absolutely encourage you to meet with the FDA if you have novel technology. If there's any doubt about what class it's in, or if you need to clarify the pivotal trial. But be careful. The FDA loves to give advice. The problem is they don't necessarily give definitive advice, and they don't necessarily stop giving you advice. So it's fine to go ahead and sit down with them and explain what you're trying to do. It's a good idea, in fact, if it's something they've not seen before. But at some point, once you've got a pretty clear idea of what they're going to do, is it a PMA, is it a 510K, how big does the trial have to be, just some very important starting points in your strategy for submitting to the FDA, stop. And then put them on the clock. So submit your application for the 510K, because at that point, they are obligated to give you a very clear-cut and definitive answer to your questions, and they have 45 days to respond, 90 days, depending on the kind of device. So that's the best thing to do. Then you get really definitive feedback. Don't try to avoid multiple predicate devices. I hope everybody understands the principle here. So we're talking about something called substantial equivalence. So with a 510K class 2 low to moderate complexity device, what you have to show is that you're comparable to something that's legally on the market. And that's called your predicate device. Avoid multiple predicate devices. The FDA reforms are probably going to put some restrictions around that. The FDA, it's a warning when they see it. That's not easy though. The problem with that is that a lot of new technology, particularly in the wireless domain, you've got the convergence of different types of technology. And quite often there isn't going to be a predicate device out there that does the multiple things that you do. So the tendency in that case, or perhaps the necessity, is going to be to have to say, we are like this device because of this feature, and we are like this device because of another. And that's okay. That's legitimate still, but just be aware that that can bog you down. It might be better to split it into 2 submissions. Get a really good regulatory consultant. Build a relationship with your FDA reviewer. It's surprising to me how many companies file technology, and it's all by email. You know, you need a personal relationship, and particularly in the area of wireless medicine, there is a lot of ambiguity. There's one guideline. It's 10 years old or older. And there are areas around the IT testing and validation for things like coexistence testing and load testing and so forth that it's not really clear. And the best thing to do is to pick up a telephone and be able to ask a direct question to your reviewer. And they are generally pretty receptive to that. And finally, if you can, consider a third-party reviewer. And even particularly in this wireless space where there is some uncertainty, if you can find a third-party reviewer that has approved a product. And does everybody know what they are? So these are independent contractors that have been contracted by the FDA to essentially go through the process of reviewing and validating a submission for a 510K clearance. And the theory is it speeds the process up and it distributes resources. And then the FDA, when they get the recommendation from the third-party reviewer, theoretically, if it's done well, then they go ahead and approve it very rapidly. So it can be a faster solution. And the third-party reviewers, I was very eager to find, I found a third-party reviewer that had approved a wireless device. And I thought, this is fabulous. This person really has done it before. They're not going to consult with you, but they will give you advice and they'll coach you through the process. But I found out that the FDA regulations don't allow me to use a third-party reviewer with pulse oximetry, so I couldn't do that. So, you know, but think about, this is where a consultant can be very helpful. So I hope that this, we've gone through this pretty quickly, and it actually is an area where any number of these topics we could spend all 20 minutes on, just on any one of them. We've got the Q&A coming up. But hopefully this has shed a little bit of light on the uncertainty around the wireless devices. It's an area of uncertainty, but it's not an area it's not a reason to shy away from this technology. It's an exciting time. I think convinced that San Diego is going to be a global hub for the development of wireless medical technology, and it's going to have a very big part to play in the evolution of our healthcare system. So it's a lot of reasons there to be very optimistic and to look forward to the future. So thank you very much.